but I think it's still important to say it. I'm very honored for having been invited by Ambassador Correa do Lag to be the special envoy for women. And when I received this invitation, I was talking to the girls that work with me. What are we going to do? Madam Janja Lula da Silva. I would like to start, obviously, first of all, wishing a good morning to everyone here and everyone around the world that's following us online as well. I'd like to start thanking Marcelle, because hearing this inspiration, this strength, really does give us a real push for us, for whom it has not been easy. It hasn't been easy for us women, for the youth. It has not been easy. The world has not been easy. And often I confess that we lose a bit of hope when you see thousands of children die of hunger in Gaza, be murdered in Gaza, being used as weapons for war. Thousands of people having to leave their countries because of climate changes. We see this migration movement throughout the world. And when we see here in Brazil a woman being violently hit in the face by a man until her face is disfigured. So that truly does make us lose hope sometimes. It's not just climate change. It's a little bit of this perverse side of humanity. I've said this as if, well, we always talk about evolution of humanity, but sometimes it seems as if we live in a moment of barbarian moment, digital against women, against children, and this sometimes makes us lose hope. But I'm going to say I'm not going to lose hope. Marcelo, you're an inspiration for us women. This month, I am 59 years old. So I have over half a century life, but to be close to this youth of yours makes a huge difference for us. That is why that having this sharing of sensations, of emotions, is really important. And I want to talk a little bit of this emotion of us hosting COP30. I have a speech here, but I learned a lot with the man I married, which happens to be the President of the Republic, but that I say that the copy at the heart of the Amazon will probably have one of the most special copies we will ever have. Marcelo spoke a little bit about this, our dear representative of indigenous people as well. But I think it's going to be special because perhaps we're going to look at beyond the white tent. And I've been to 2 COPs, and you know this, Egypt's COP was that white tent full of air conditioner with water coming from Italy, which I thought was absurd. What about the carbon emissions in Dubai, that monstrosity of that space? But COP30 is going to be different because we know of the whole difficulty that we're going to have copy in Belém. But I want to tell you, those that came to Brazil for this event, that are listening to us throughout the world, that we're going to really have a beautiful copy, because I think it's going to be a copy of feeling and feelings. I'm going to say we're going to have meetings, we're going to discuss, we're going to dialogue, even if it's under a tree. We're going to do it because that's what matters, to exchange experiences, to exchange emotions, and to exchange this perspective, this outlook for the future. Marcelo said it really well. It's COP30, and we're still talking about the future. The future is now. If it's not now, there won't be a future. So we're going to do it, and I'm sure, and I want to invite everyone to come to Belém. We know of all the difficulties, but the federal government has been working really hard that everyone be very welcome and well hosted at Belém, and so that they really can have a table, meeting table that really listen to us, the youth, indigenous people, those that are marginalized. So I'm going to go back to my speech now, but a lot of what I'm going to say here, obviously almost everyone that's here that is a militant of this cause knows, but I think it's still important to say it. I'm very honored for having been invited by Ambassador Correa do Lago to be the special envoy for women. And when I received this invitation, I was talking to the girls that work with me. What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about the experiences that Brazil has, the different communities? We're going to talk about the experiences in the world. And so when we studied a little, we noticed that it's not just youth that don't have voice. Women also don't have the voice. Especially for COP30. We know Minister Marina here, that is one of our greatest inspirations at these events, that has always participated. She knows very well what the difficulty that we have. Vanessa, that works constantly for this gender issues in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that is in these negotiating table, knows the difficulty that we women have being in these decision-making and power positions. So I'm going to use my voice for this, and how much our voice needs to be heard. Because without us, there is no future. We must be at the negotiating table. Without women, you cannot build a better future. We cannot go forth into the future. So I decided to use my voice, the space I was given, and where I am, to talk about this. And yes, we're going to bring important experiences of resilience for women. We're also going to speak wherever I manage to be, I will talk about this, and I count on all the special envoys of the copy, and especially Minister Marina. There's going to be with me in many events. We're going to participate in many events from here until Berlin, and so we're going to talk about this a lot. But, so I'm also going to talk a little bit here about the general case, but I wanted to really greet the organization of this event, greet Floribert, who runs the UNFPA people who organized this event, and thank you for the invitation. I've already spoken so much, haven't I? So it's a pleasure for me to be here with you, especially at this historical moment that demands that reaffirm our engagement in the defense and promotion of gender equality. The fight for the recognition of women and girls' rights and gender equality in international governments was neither easy nor simple. As Simone de Beauvoir says, all you need is a political, economic, religious crisis in order for women's rights to be questioned. This reality is once more imposed on us. The world keeps facing multiple crises that deepen internal and external inequalities of countries, putting at a checkmate the historical conquest for the most vulnerable. Women and girls, especially indigenous Afro-descendants and from the margin society, continue having the brunt of the effects of this. According to the Second Global Forum, if we continue on the current rhythm, we're going to take yet another 123 years to reach gender parity. 123 years. We are still earning salaries that are on average 20% lower than that of men, and we dedicate 2 to 3 times more than men on domestic duties and chores, which impacts our income, our schooling, and so on. Furthermore, 1 on every 3 women in the world has already suffered some kind of physical or sexual violence. Women and girls continue having challenges to have their human right to health, where access to sexual health and maternal health and menstrual dignity become political weapons for discussion and not for the improvement of quality of life. We know the vast majority of population that is in extreme poverty are women, and that especially in countries in the global south, they face historical barriers of access to education, dignified employment, credit, and social protection. Even with the recent advances in equity, there is still vast brunt of this, that is poverty is taken by women. We expect in the next few years 150 million of girls and women to poverty and hunger. And this is what we can no longer accept. This is the kind of future we're talking about. In Brazil, women are central for the strategy to fight hunger and poverty through the government of President Lula. And this is the work that, since he's taken on his third mandate, resulted in the announcement of the FAO that Brazil has once again left the map of hunger. And I have such an immense pride of speaking of this, because those who are listening to us who aren't from Brazil, it is important to know that President Lula, when he took his first mandate in 2003, had a country that was destroyed with its social promotion policies that were completely destroyed. When he took over in 2023. And we here, as ministers, we're on a daily work of rebuilding this policy. So it is with great joy and pride that we received this announcement from FAO that Brazil has once again left the map of hunger. So, because a country that produces animal protein and grains for the entire world cannot have people that are suffering hunger. And if there is a cause that is important for President Lula, is the fight against hunger. For those who know him, they know that this is one of his huge and biggest causes. And this fight to poverty and hunger is completely linked to the perspective of gender and its formulation and implementation. Programs as the Bolsa Família, Minha Casa Minha Família were conceived to prioritize women as beneficiaries, giving security and autonomy to them. Women are also central for food security in our country, with policies of food production fostering programs, such as the National School Meal Program, that I have a huge pride of being ambassador for it here in Brazil. Family farmers that are women, guaranteeing health and food security in schools, and thousands of women Brazilians feed their families every day. Yesterday, the example of the fisher women that, with the support of the program of artisanal fisheries, had their culture of artisanal fishing valued. The advances in facing inequalities in Brazil are truly significant. In 2024, the social inequality had a historical reduction, with the biggest increase of revenue of the poorest. The increase of employment and revenue made that 8.6 million Brazilians stopped needing the benefit of the social program Bolsa Família. And President Lula continues putting Brazil as a promoter of solidarity, strengthening multilateralism, and fostering initiatives and coordinated actions to face the challenges of our time. While some feed disputes and conflicts and create barriers and remove themselves from historical multilateral agreements, Brazil will continue feeding hope, respect, and especially dialogue. Many aspects in regards to climate and impact on the populations were examined and deepened in the discussions in this symposium, strengthening the understanding that it's impossible to advance in the construction of resilience and of a sustainable development without incorporating gender equality in environmental and climate policies. There cannot be climate justice without gender equality, without the full participation of women. The research showed that the biggest bigger presence of women in parliament shows that they're linked to more robust climate policies. However, globally, women occupy only 25% of the legislative chairs and 15% of ministerial positions for the environment. And we're very proud of having a woman in the Ministry of Environment, Minister Marina Silva. Despite leading environmental activism for decades, their representation in climate negotiation is limited. In the national delegations for COPs, the women's participation increased from 30 to 35% between 2012 and 2022. But the number of women leading these delegations dropped from 21 to 20% in the same period, showing the persistence of inequality for gender in climate governance. It is within this context that the role of women in climate negotiation internationally, including COP30 in Brazil, needs to be radically strengthened. The lack of female voice, especially of women from the global south, impacts in less inclusive decisions, less efficient decisions, and that are also less fair. It's not just a question of representation, but of transformation. Women are not just victims of the climate crisis. We are guardians of solutions, resistance leaders, and possible future protagonists. There are innumerable innovative technologies that are produced and managed by women for the communities, for the construction of climate resilience. Many women came before us, opening doors and paths for us, and many young voices continue joining themselves to our fight. They are the future. That historical conquest, such as the Conference on the Development of Population in '94 in Cairo, and the fourth Women's Conference in Beijing, continue inspiring us and helping us bring integrated and courageous and transformative answers. We must remember that nothing was handed to us. All advances that us women and girls had are results of our own determination and work. Let's continue hand in hand with courage and inspiring and strengthening ourselves to together build a world where gender equality be the base for a more sustainable and fairer development. Thank you very much. Well, we thank Madam Janja Lula da Silva for her speech and her participation. I would like to invite now the Minister of Racial Equality, Madam Aniele, Minister Aniele Franco. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, it's almost lunchtime. We're going to speed up, I promise. So first of all, it's an honor to be here to greet everyone here. And we have the man there. Now, this is like a quota. That's how we usually feel. But thank you for the stretching session as well. It was great. Minister Márcia, I'd like to talk about these two special women that are friends. Marina, because she said, my mother said, take care of my daughter, and Janja, because every time we're together, my mother says, please take care of her. But a care with feelings. And I'm going to start my speech also always speaking and saying that it's an honor to walk side by these women, because like Janja said, to be in these spaces is not easy, especially when we reach these spaces and we also have political will, which is what these two women have. I'm always proud for you to have open paths for this agenda that has moved the world and agendas, and we must be proud. There's anyone that does anything against this, against you, is inadmissible. So always being solidary to you and with you. And Janja, because when she takes a position of non-submission and to put herself in this true political place, even being side by side to one of these greatest statespeople in the world. And when she's attacked, we must fight against this. I'm always next to her whenever she needs it as well. And I wanted to beside the greetings to everyone, thank you for your speech, great speech for youth, but also to say we must commemorate for a president that removed Brazil from the map of hunger for the first time and takes it out yet a second time. Because Brazil would only understand this once its leader would be someone that had already gone through hunger himself. I remember Marcele, I'm from Maranhão, from a favela originally. Very often we're in the pandemic in food kitchens, handing food. So Solidarity Kitchens has a very important role, and I take advantages to talk about civil society. It's important that we walk hand in hand. This is why we have you here, for example. Oh, I never imagined I would be at the TCU, at the accounting course. Me neither. But here we are talking about this together. Janja, almost as if Janja was reading my own speech. No, I'm joking. She spoke about solidarity, that I cannot start already having been a victim of violence as well in different ways without being solidary with that girl that had suffered over 60 punches in her face, without saying that it's inadmissible to still live in a country where people find that normal. That is not normal. We can normalize any kind of violence against women. And what an honor to be on the right side of history, where we do not make jokes with women that are murdered, that suffer violence. So that being said, it's an honor to be here with you all, to say that we have thought a lot about the fact there's less than 100 days for the COP, and how important this moment is for our country. We're going to be reunited with several heads of state of the world, and to advance on this agenda that is so important. And to talk about climate justice isn't just a question of environment, it's about people. As Marceli said very well, it's about human rights, racial equality, and gender, because we know that the people that suffer the brunt of the impact of climate change. We have some data that was brought by the Ministry of Women, actually, that is 80% of the women that are made to migrate in the world because of climate change are women and girls, and they have 14 more chances of dying in climate disaster. We know what women and girls we're talking about are the most vulnerable and poorest. And important data that was brought by the Institution of Climate Justice shows that more than 40% of families led by black women still lives in areas without proper sanitation. This is not a coincidence. This is a consequence of centuries of public policy that always push these most vulnerable populations towards these conditions. And it is also not a coincidence that this be the people that best take care of the environment. The Quilombolas indigenous lands are the lands where forests are still standing, and that keeps our whole human race alive. It's a public service that they do for us. This is why we've been working a lot to advance in this agenda for giving land rights to Quilombolas, which is beyond that also strengthening sustainable development of these territories. We have invested over $1 billion reais in Quilombos, and it's important to mention there was in this third Lula mandate. Third Lula, well, that would be fantastic. If we had 3 Lulas, we'd be really well, wouldn't we? But the third mandate of his, that we can still beat records, not just of demarcation of lands, of land titles. It is important to say that because since the third mandate, he says we must take care of the Quilombos and the care that he has. And last week, we sent the first center in a Quilombola land because the first federal institute, Quilombola, that takes the name of a very important black person. And we've been working also in international field for the recognition of inclusion and financing of these people, as well as we did with Minister Sona, Mr. Marina, participation in COP16 in Colombia, which is the COP of biodiversity, and it's what we're going to do once again at COP30 in Brazil.
It's fundamental to advance on protection actions to protect girls and women, as we know that in these situations of vulnerability, we also increase sexual violence. The number of violence in shelters have shown this, and it's unacceptable. We need to interrupt this cycle of pain and violence. I'm really proud to be here next to the women that work daily. It's many of the challenges that we face, but it's moments like this that remember us that we're not alone with environmentalism, that there is no climate justice. And the sovereign Brazil that we defend is the one of climate justice, gender equality, and race. Thank you so much. Very well. Thank you so much, Minister Aniele Franco, for your valuable contribution. Now I give the microphone to Márcia Lopes, Minister of State of Women from Brazil. Good afternoon, everyone. The participants of this important symposium that inspires the world with so many countries who are also here. It is truly important, and I hope when I was already talking to Juni that these were days of a lot of construction, and that is what we need, a world without wars and a unified world with common agendas that are so important. I would like to salute Florbela Fernandes, the representative of the Populations Fund of the UN in Brazil, that kindly is receiving us here, the First Lady from Brazil, Janja Lula da Silva, our dear Minister of the Environment, our reference, and we are sharing her with the world. And she truly has been our reference when we say that women need to be where they want and not go according to the offense that the minister received at the Chamber of Deputies. And I'm already announcing that next year we can't vote on men that disrespect women. We want women and men that really fight for gender equality. Our dear Minister of Racial Equality, Aniele Franco, the special envoy, that has shared with me that she was going to another event now in the Ministry of Health, Cinea do Vale, our young climate champion, Marcelo Oliveira, that inspires us. I was with the Forum of Hip Hop Women. We have launched a call to award them, and this is what we were talking about, that the youth is in peripheral areas. They are living there every day, so count on the Ministry of Women, many actions that we have been performing with the youth. Thank you so much. The representative of gender on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Vanessa, that also has helped us, guided us with this articulation. He shared, thank you so much. The ambassador of youth from CARICOM, Ashanta Ramsey, the director of Fiocruz, our partner, Fabiani, the executive secretary of our ministry. Well, our team that is here, resilience and representatives of the world in such an important moment that Brazil is living in. The decision of President Lula to build this process that won't only happen in the event that is COP30. It has also provoked the world, and Brazil particularly. Wherever we go, we see people saying that we are here performing the pre-COP, pre-COP. Everyone is already heated up to prepare COP. There is no climate justice without gender justice. And Aniele has already spoken about some data, and that is true. Women are those who suffer the most with climate change. You may have spoken about this, and they are protagonists of a new time with new hope. 80% of the workforce in family agriculture is made of women. So the food that come to our homes in Brazil truly come from family agriculture. So President Lula, ever since his first administration with Fome Zero, Zero Hunger program, has implemented important laws on food production, taking care with fields, forests, and we need to expose this data. We need to reveal the realities that are lived by each group, by each movement of women throughout Brazil. And they are precisely black, indigenous, peripheral women, trans women, homeless people. They are the 20 segments of peoples and traditional peoples that we have here in Brazil that are protagonists on one hand about the possibility of building affirmative actions, mobilization actions, innovative actions, and creative actions. When we talk about preserving the environment, about the peaceful living, which is what we want as a future, as protagonism, as well-being, as our livelihoods, and also they suffer the consequences due to all the violence that they suffer, sexism, this dispute of power. That is why the 18 SDGs should guide our actions, our policies, and the partnership between the federal government. Whenever President Lula comes back to the government, or President Dilma, as we had, our relationship with the world improves, with international organizations, with partnerships. We do not want disputes. We want partnerships, collaboration. And that is why we are really proud to see the president placing Brazil back to the map with democratic relations, in a relationship of learning, mutual learning. He always said that we don't need to sell what we do. We don't need to perform any marketing. We need to go there and have each country learn what are the realities. How can we build another world together? And that's why within this document, I really liked the principle of equity, inclusion, and leaving no one behind. This is what this is about. We have 110 million women in Brazil. There is much to do. We have an enormous potential with women in each state, in the 5,570 municipalities. When I travel, I like to talk to women. I was at the Regional Conference of Indigenous Women. For those who do not leave today, on Sunday, Brasilia will receive 5,000 indigenous women. We are going to have the March of Indigenous Women and the first National Conference of Indigenous Women. On the 29th and 30th of September, we're going to have the 5th National Conference of Policies for Women that was not performed for many years, as conservative governments, transphobic, fascist governments do not want to hear the population or women, and now we have brought back these conferences. more than 3,000 municipal conferences, free conferences, state conferences that are starting now, which will have 3,500 women that will charm Brasilia from the 29th of September. And also, we will have our March of Black Women on the 25th of November that will bring another force, and this is a permanent agenda. Sometimes people would say how hard it is to go through airports in Brazil, as people always feel distrust, and immediately when we were with Minister Silvio Costa, so now let's have a big movement so that everyone can receive you. As Brasilia will have many women with many segments, all groups in Brazil, and that's how we show changes, transformation of our reality. So I would like to conclude by saying that the Ministry of Women is absolutely integrated. We have talked to the president of COP, Ambassador Fernando Lago. Sorry, André Correia do Lago, to say to the working group that we have that we are sharing all the agendas, and no meeting can be done, no conference can be done without talking about gender and climate. And we want the documents for COP, that all the letters, decisions, the dynamic that will happen in Berlin. I have already talked to the female state secretariat in Pará to say that we need to have this as a reference, as a commitment. Let's build initiative, actions on this. When Marcelo was speaking, I remember that when I was 12, my science teacher said, if we don't take care of nature now, in 50 years, the world will explode. The planet will no longer be able to be lived anymore. So I always think about this, how my mind changed, the mind of my colleagues, and that's how we transform things. When we have a concrete action every day, when we incorporate this perspective, that is why in the ministry, I just would like to talk about 4 points, which are the actions that we are implementing: an integrated action plan with women and climate, a training course with Minister Marina, popular diplomacy, climate emergency, genders and territory, in partnership with UNB, and we want to reproduce this towards Brazil. Social participation fora coordinated by our ministry with women from water, field, quilombola women, riparian, water workers, every group and segment. A protocol of guidelines to protect women and girls in emergencies, climate emergency situations, produced in partnership with UN Women. I have another list, but I will finish up here to say that the Ministry of Women, on the first day that President Lula invited me, has said, I want to see a Brazil with happier women, with women that are more protagonists. I don't want to hear about violence. Of course, it's unacceptable. No one likes violence, and this was said here. And I have been talking to mayors in each municipality. If each one of them says that here we will no longer have violence against women, this is a decisive step so we can change reality. And whenever I'm asked, Minister, what will you do to end with femicides? My will is to say, ask men, as that is the dialogue that we need to have. We are not fighting against men. The UN Women, with the He for She program, many other organizations are being our partners in this process of dialogue, discovering what will help a man, a young man, the research showing violence between the youth who are dating, what will make them reproduce this absolutely harmful, criminal dispute that doesn't match people. And also President Lula would say, it's so difficult. Why is it so difficult for us to change a reality, to change a way of thinking? This gives us strength for all of our organizations, civil society organizations. I just came from the Free Conference of Workers here, so we need to have dialogues, build collectively a new way of thinking, and study gender and climate, the consequences of climate change. This needs to be made into actions that, despite being simple, translate another future that we want. Thank you for the possibility to be here, and I would like to invite all of you to participate on our conferences. Brazil has this beauty of social movements. Women are absolutely participative. They are protagonists. They are solidary, resistant, and they want to build their territory, community, taking care of nature, beauty, and their bodies. Congratulations for the symposium. May this truly be implemented and taken to all authorities so we can change this environment, this world, as fast as possible. Thank you so much. Right now, we are going to hear the Minister of State for the Environment and Climate Change in Brazil, Marina Silva. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say how satisfied I am to be able to participate of a relevant debate such as this, of the Global Symposium on Climate Justice and Impacted Populations. And among the impacted populations, we have the most vulnerable segments. That is why it is important to have this global symposium where we are emphasizing some segments. We know that climate injustice affects many segments in our society. I would like to especially salute our First Lady, Special Envoy for Women in COP30, Janja da Silva. Thank you for your work and for everything that you have been doing to be within these spaces, strengthening us with your testimony, with your fight, not only now as you are the First Lady, but for this being part of your trajectory. I also would like to salute our dear Minister Aniele, Minister of Racial Equality. She is a potency, a young woman that makes me emotional when I think about her life trajectory and everything that she represents to us women, especially those who have been in this journey for so long. How happy we are to know that we can pass our baton on. I mean, not because we're gonna do that, because one generation learns with the other, and one generation needs to train another one. So you nowadays is already a trainer. I'd like to salute Vanessa and the ambassador and high representative for gender subjects for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for the work. It's important for us to understand in the state policies that they stay even when governments or administrations change. Madam Ashanta Ramsey, I don't know if I said it correctly, but the Youth Ambassador for the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, thank you so much. Florisbela Fernandes, representative of the Populations Fund of the UN in Brazil, thank you. Richauas Martins, the president of the National Commission of Populations and Development, Cinea do Vale, that is no longer here, who has spoken before, an indigenous woman who is also one of our special envoys for COP30, and dear Marceli, that we were really happy to meet on the ethical global balance in Europe. And it's interesting to say that a young person from the peripheral areas inspires us so much, but that acts. Sometimes we think that to inspire is to just talk about sentiments, but it also makes us to act. Well, I believe that many things have already been mentioned that have to do with the climate crisis. As was said, it does not equally affect people. All of us are affected by climate emergency, but it's not in the same way. People who suffer with drought are affected in peripheral areas in the northeast or other regions in Africa or Asia in a different way. People that suffer with floods, the extreme climate events, be it in Bangladesh or Rio Grande do Sul, are in a different way. When they are the same, we end up making or committing injustice. If I need to have a program looking at the populations of our society in the most different continents, I need to consider that women suffer in a different way the climate emergency issue. Peripheral populations are the same. Indigenous populations, the youth, children. That's why we need to have public policies that are customized, tailored for each reality. So when I see that the objective of this symposium is for issues related towards women and the most vulnerable, should be at the center of priorities of public policies to fight climate emergency. Women throughout the world, as was already said, when there is a situation in which they are in shelters, are more susceptible to violence. When they need to have access to food, they are the ones that many times can achieve food afterwards. That is the same thing that happens when we talk about access to water. So there are situations that are of extreme injustice. But I would also like to talk about climate injustice, since many of us catch this concept and we assimilate it in under our own perspective of our segment, region, position we occupy. And I have said in conversations with our ambassador, Correia do Lago, that perhaps we need to work with some kind of taxonomy of climate justice so we can find a common language. As for developed countries, the idea of climate justice seems to appear in one way, and for us, underdeveloped countries, it's another way. And we also see it is different. We have those who have a high average income and those who have a low income, and this is different, kind of a taxonomy of ideas. Climate justice so we can create a common language. And the first step is to not handle them as if they were the same. And President Lula, thinking about this, has thought about COP30 in a way that is extremely disruptive, innovative.
One of them, beyond of the champions such as Marcelli and our other champion, Don, that are doing an incredible work, he also thought in having the special envoys as well. It's over 30 special envoys. They're going to talk about the indigenous issues, gender issues, this entrepreneurial sector. There's over 30 special envoys, and our First Lady has been undertaking a fundamental role in all of this. The other part, the mobilization circles of COP30. What are they? We have these circles of finance ministers. Marina, why finance ministers? Because we know that one of the bottlenecks to implement the policies to face climate emergencies and the other issues is lack of resources. So the finance ministers to help so that we can actually manage to get $1.3 trillion per year in the next 10 years to face climate change. Did you know that, well, as long as we don't get 1.3 trillion for this, the world still invests then 3 trillion in investments for fossil fuels? And while we can't get even 100 billion, the world invests in activities that changes the climate, destroys biodiversity in between $5 to $6 trillion per year. It's an extremely uneven fight. That's why the president thought, let's create the circle with the ministers of finance to help the flow of money. The circle of ex-COP presidents to help us in the negotiation. They have good COP experiences, such as Paris COP, the Copenhagen COP. Because we're saying this COP is in Brazil, in the Amazon, but it doesn't belong to the Amazon or to Brazil. The results will not be only a responsibility of Brazil. It's 196 ethical balance in Africa and Asia. We're going to do it in Oceania, South America, and Caribbean. What is that? Before, we had the general balance of the agreement of Paris, and it was really important for the decisions that were made. He understood that more than a technical balance, we also need an ethical balance to bring the perspective of women, of indigenous, of young people, of scientists, of activists, and even of children. We're thinking on a methodology so that together with UNICEF, we can also have the children's perspective with the adequate methodology, with the necessary care, because children obviously cannot be exposed inadequately. So the global ethical balance is so that we can help, so that us leaders, the negotiators, can consider all of this here, but that they consider more than people, that life, just our human lives, no, all human life, but also other forms of existence. So COP30 will be the huge joint effort of 196 countries, so that we can do something that we have been pushing forward for 30 years. In 92, the convention was born here in Brazil, with the climate, biodiversity, desertification, and the letter for Earth. We're discussing a lot of things, but it's time for us to truly be hands-on and to implement what we decided. We decided a lot of things. And we've already said that we cannot have an increase of over 1.5 degrees. We've already decided we need 1.3 trillion to help the most vulnerable to do their transitions. And we have decided that we have to consider what science says to make our decisions based on data and evidence, not just of modern science, but of traditional knowledge, ancestral knowledge. We have already decided that we have to triple renewables and do the transition for the end of use of fossil fuels. Petrol, carbon, petrol, charcoal, etc. And in this sense, I want to dialogue with all the partners there at this global symposium that President Lula has taken on the engagement of zero deforestation up to 2030. This is why we are stimulating that all countries bring ambitious NDCs committed to not go beyond the 1.5 degree temperature increase. We've already decided to implement this, and this is why we have defended COP30 that we are working to have the map for the path, a mandated group to create the roadmap for the end of use of fossil fuel, roadmap for these complete stoppage of deforestation, and the roadmap for 1.3 trillion. Because it's not enough to decide. We must implement. And to implement, it's not magic. We must plan for it. The best thing to do, we can do, is to plan to change. It's better to decide to change and plan in a fair way than for us to be forced to change by circumstance. And we are already being changed. When there is a drought, we're being changed. When there's a flood, we're being changed. Over 500,000 people die because of heat waves. Who dies? Children, the elderly, especially. And did you know that this is sub-dimensioned because the majority of people arrive with respiratory crisis, with other issues that are not associated to the heat wave. And that is why the wars are so huge issues, because we see the murder and legitimate indignation. But there is another war that is taking lives, 500,000 per year, just due to heat waves. When we add that to that floods and all the other issues, it's far too many people that are losing their lives. This is why we're not even calling it an emergency anyway. We're not saying it's urgent anymore. We're calling it a climate emergency. And we're calling for a joint effort of implementation. And thank you very much for the symposium. And may you all bring contributions that are already being given so that COP30 can be the copy of the implementation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister Marina Silva, for sharing such pertinent information for this dialogue. At this moment, I will invite Ambassador Vanessa Dosich Farias, Special Advisor of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and High Representative for Gender Issues for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say that it's a huge honor for me to be sat at this round table. I would like to greet Forbella Fernandes, representative of the UNFPA Brazil, to greet our state ministers, our champion for youth, our special envoys for COPI, for Janja, our president of the commission, all of you that followed us in the last 3 days of the seminary, and for those that are following us online. The subject that got you together here these last days, which is health, climate, and gender. I'd like to start saying that it brought in my ministry, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a reflection on our part, which I think is important to share because it illustrates things about the negotiation processes. Minister Marina Silva helped me a little bit because she already mentioned a bit of that, and I want to quickly talk about that, just not to tire you too much, but I'm a diplomat, so I'm going to share the perspective that is the one from our side. I think we have three big SDGs that were debated here. SDG 3